7:20 on a Thursday. Good morning. Tam, Mayor, Sid here with you. This is Breakfast Television. Great to see you. Boy, did we have some headlines regarding our premier yesterday. And they ran the gamut. Here's a quick recap here. Tam's been walking you through a lot of these all morning. Premier responded to increasing the drinking age. We have a clip on that. Solar eclipse signs pulled from 400 series highways. And the Premier wants only Ontario students attending Ontario universities and colleges. Let's start with the drinking age thing. It was last week, Dr. Kieran Moore put out a report, and there were a lot of suggestions in the report, but the one that's kind of making the biggest headline is raising the drinking age from 19 to 21. He also suggested restricting access to alcohol and decriminalizing simple possession of unregulated drugs for personal use. The Premier spoke on this yesterday.
We believe in treating people like adults all across the world. You get to go into a retail store, a big box store, and buy a bottle of wine with your steak and maybe a six-pack of beer like the rest of the world does.
All right, so that's item one. Back to the solar eclipse thing. If you've been driving around the 400 series highways over the last little bit, you'll notice messages that told people to stay home during next Monday's totality of the solar eclipse. Again, around 3:19 Monday, it's going to be like this. The government says the signs were inconsistent with their approach and have pulled that signage and the messaging. Final item. Premier Ford wants to see Ontario post-secondary institutions attended only by students from the province. Ford said about 18% of students are international students. Ford said he's not being, quote, mean, end quote. He's just putting Ontario students first. He said some Ontario students study abroad and then do not return home after they meet someone. There's a lot here, Mayor and Tam. There's a lot here. So, Mayor, I'll start with you. What's of the three headlines, what sticks out the most for you?
The last one. That's the one that I had to reread a couple times because, I know there's been lots of discussion about international students and what that looks like for the colleges in particular. We've gone through sort of the cause and effect of that. But this seemed to be something different. I mean, I remember attending university. Now, I'm from Ontario. I did stay in Ontario. But there were a lot of people, and part of the wealth of my university experience was I met people from all over. Both interprovincially and other countries. And I think taking that part away seems, not beneficial to me as an Ontarian. So I was surprised by that, especially the line about going abroad and then meeting someone. I guess the Premier is getting involved in our romantic relationships.
Diving into relationships.
Yeah,
the Minister of Relationships
right.
is somewhere.
Yeah, that was surprising, and I don't agree with it.
Yeah, that one really stuck out to me too. And the thing I immediately thought was, are Ontario students being denied access in some way? Like, is there just not enough room and Ontario students are getting left behind?
Yeah, like they're not being prioritized?
Yeah, so I'm just wondering if there was something that prompted that. And also, what does it mean for people out of province? Like, you say Ontario only, but what if you are from Quebec or from BC and you want to come over to Ontario? Does he mean just international students outside of Canada, or is it just literally students from Ontario who live and were, educated in Ontario?
It wasn't. It felt like it wasn't that long ago when the federal government put the pause on international student visas, that this provincial government was not happy about it.
You're right there too.
They weren't.
They
this
weren't.
wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden we want to go all Ontario, all support local. Like what? I don't know where the messaging's really coming from. I don't quite understand it. It's getting a little muddied for me lately from this provincial government. I don't. I keep hearing about the carbon tax and Premier Ford saying, you know what, if you don't axe this tax, you're out in 18 months. Great. So the guy 20 points down in the polls is in trouble in the next election. Thanks, Premier. I needed that. I needed that insight from you. The solar eclipse thing, it's not as big as the student one. The student one to me is the biggest headline. The solar eclipse one is just consistent with how inconsistent the story is to me, and I know we've been having a bit of fun with this. With the amount of school boards closing, was it Waterloo that closed yesterday as well?
Yeah.
That was the latest school board? With the amount of school boards closing, with the amount of tourism that the Niagara region is begging people to come in and enjoy, I don't know what people want me to do with this. I don't know what the angle is. Is it safe? Is it not safe? I've heard nothing from this provincial government about what's happening around 3 o'clock on Monday when rush hour is really kicking up in this city. Is that an issue? Is it not an issue? I don't know. It's an issue for schools. It's a liability issue. Why is it not a liability issue for the province? There's a lot of sucking and blowing going on here at the same time. But the students in universities and colleges was the most interesting thing by far. I'm with you on yes. Any closing thoughts from either of you on that?
I was just going to say with the drinking age, I really think 19 is a good time for people to start indulging if they want to. Good time to have a good time. I feel like you are responsible enough. You have been driving you could have driven for 3 years by that time. Right next door in Quebec, it's 18. To have that discrepancy, 3 years difference just across a border, may lead to other things as well. Kids are doing it already at 19. I don't see moving, and I feel like education is where you need to go. I'm
with you on the alcohol thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming Kieran Moore has some stats to back up why he's recommending this. So, you know, I don't have those, and so I look to him to have that understanding and hopefully acting out of the safety of kids. But yeah, I mean, Premier Ford doesn't seem to be for it. So
yeah,
I mean, the States is 21, is it not?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not, when he said all around the world, we like to be consistent. I mean, our neighbor right to the south, they're 21.
As much as I agree with the fact 19 is probably good, if you put those two gentlemen side by side telling me something regarding the medical world, I know which one I'm going to listen to, but hey, to each their own. All right, we're going to take a break. Tammie's got a lot more news coming up. Also coming up at 7:40, we'll be joined by comedy legend Colin Mockery and master hypnotist Assad Mekki to talk about their hilarious show returning to Toronto. 7:27, you're watching BT.